Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and my fellow Forest fan from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray. Oh, I could play that all day long. There you go, Richard. Good morning. How you doing, mate?
Morning. Oh man, that's a real classic. Yeah, I remember seeing that on the theater and just being absolutely obsessed with it. So that was fantastic. Thanks, man. Morning, guys.
We all were. I think we all came out of cinemas, as we call it, back in the day. And I remember going to watch Karate Kid 3 as well, and coming out of Portsmouth Odeon with two mates and doing karate kicks all down the street. But that's another story. Anyway, on to today. A terrible run of 6 defeats in 7 and no wins at all. A headline in the last 2 seasons that might have applied to Nottingham Forest. But on this particular occasion, we're talking about our opponents on Wednesday night. 4 times in a row and reigning Premier League champions, Manchester City. Have the wheels come off the City Express? Can Pep, with more scars on his face than Freddy Kruger, find a way to stop the Reds as Nuno looks to add to the woes of a club with 115 charges against their name and looking more like Long Itchington Women than the team who have dominated English football over the past 10 years? Well, joining Richard and I to go through it all, we have the man with the facts and figures. It's the statman, Danscape. I'm a statman. More of that later. Dan, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Both songs today definitely helping wake us up on a Monday morning. Wow, for sure.
For those of you that missed last evening, we did the Ipswich game review, and we had a few gremlins at the start. But both of those, or what I should rather say, is that episode has now been loaded onto both Apple and Spotify. I get my words out. So Apple and Spotify, the audio is now available for anyone that wants to go back and listen to the Ipswich Town match review. Don't forget to join in the comments. If you don't say hi, we don't know you're here and all that kind of stuff. We want to give shout outs. And so please do drop your comments in. Questions and thoughts are plenty. Of course, if you are going to listen to Apple and Spotify with your headphones on, lying in bed, maybe thinking of Jota Silva's eyebrows or something later, we thank you also for joining us as well. I gave a quiz question yesterday. The FA Women's National League North is the answer. I asked about where the women's team play. It's the FA Women's National League North. I didn't give the answer at the end, but there is another quiz question for today, and it's along the bottom. It's who did Forest sign Alf Inge Haaland from? Was it Bern or Rossland? So back in the day when we signed Erling's dad, where did we get him from? Did we sign him from Bern or Rossland? I will hopefully remember to give the answer at the end. Okay, please hit like and subscribe and do your thing to help us along with getting our numbers up. We're into December. We're trying to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. It's been a slog. Thank you so much for everyone who has helped us with a like and a subscribe. It goes a long way to getting our numbers up. We really, really hope that you can help us if you haven't liked and subscribed already. Okay, right, enough of that. On to Wednesday, so the big one, and it's Manchester City at the Etihad, which we might have thought at the start of the season, Richard, would be a game, a free hit. And I think what you call something like, playing with the house money type thing, where, free hit, do what you like, get up there, see what you can come away with. Probably a defeat, but as long as the performance is half decent, we'll be okay. Now, the context of the game is completely different, with Forest sitting 6th in the Premier League still, just one place below Manchester City, our opponents, and 1 point below them, because their run has been pretty terrible. They've looked largely ineffective. They haven't looked themselves. So we're going to go to the Etihad against a wounded animal. I know that you're a little bit worried about this, but just give us your general thoughts on how you think this one might play out.
Yeah, my worries pretty much stemmed in the fact that I'm probably taking a very pessimistic view of it, of their 6 defeats in a row. Excuse me, can't get my words out. But I worry that means that they're going to be out for blood, because similar to when we played Arsenal, they were in a little bit of a dip of form. Obviously, getting Odegaard back made a huge difference and has continued to make a difference for them in terms of their recent form. But Man City not having Rodri clearly is an impactful thing. And I'm just worried that they're going to be like, there's just absolutely zero chance that Pep and the rest of that squad are going to accept a 7th defeat in a row, or even a lesser performance. So my worry is that they're going to come in guns blazing and ready to embarrass us because of that situation. But at the same time, as you pointed out, you can take the positive look on this and spin on it and say, well, they're wounded. As you mentioned, there's someone that we can maybe get at, whereas in the past it probably wouldn't have been an option to get at them as much as we'd like to. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll at least get a draw in this match, and that would be fantastic. But as you stated, a good performance, a certainly higher level of performance than we saw at the Emirates would be favorable too.
I said a couple of weeks ago, and I think in our WhatsApp group, I said we're not going to lose against Man City. I think they weren't that far into their poor run, but I think they might have lost back-to-back games. And I just sort of put it in there. That's it. Mystic Greg and his crystal ball. We're not going to lose to Man City. And I hope that, of course, that is not the case. I'd take a point now all day long. Any of us would. But Dan, has there ever been a better time to play Man City in the last decade, really? I mean, since Pep's come in, it's never been like this. He's never had to experience this. Has there ever been a better time to play them? And yes, they are a wounded animal and are going to want to obviously end that drought, but they're going to have wanted to have ended that run against Liverpool. They're going to have wanted to have ended that run in the game before and it just hasn't happened. But it's going to get to a point, isn't it, surely, that at some point that bad run's going to come to an end. And in seasons past, it would be the most Forest thing in the world to be the team that they score 6 against. But I just kind of feel that things are a little bit different at the moment. Forest aren't the animal they once were. They've shown that time and time again. Yeah, okay, fine. We went to Arsenal and things weren't great, but we had that bounce back ability in our team at the moment. So has it ever been a better time to play City? Do you think we can get something out of this?
We couldn't really hope for a better time to play them, could we? Like you mentioned, our pre-season predictions, we never would have expected to be anywhere near this scenario where we're a point off them. We're both in the top 6, and it looks on a very first glance, it looks like quite an even game in that respect. So we've got to go into it positive. But what's good about us is we are a very professional team. We know how to approach every game for the most part with a plan that's going to keep the opposition quiet, which, let's face it, Man City are still, as we come onto the stats and things, they're still top of most of the chart in the Premier League for a lot of things to do with possession and shots and stuff like that. But at the minute, they're struggling for the players they've got in the team. And I think that's, they can't fix that within 2 days. So unless they're going to get Rodri back, in some miracle cure, they're going to have that hole in midfield, which I think is undone them, because I don't think they've got great centre-backs, especially at the minute with Stones doesn't seem to be playing a lot. The 2 centre-backs they've got there aren't elite level centre-backs, I don't think, but I think they get away with it because they dominate the game, they dominate possession, and in the past they've had Rodri kind of protecting them and stopping teams getting straight at the centre-backs, and at the minute they don't have that. So that's our opportunity, is if we can weather the storm which will come out of possession, if we can get behind them, we've definitely got the players that can cause some damage.
Want to pop into the comments? Good morning to Gary Lamb. Great to have you with us, Gary. I hope you're feeling good, buddy. Phil the Forest says, morning, chaps. We need to be brave at City. I'm hoping the hiccup at Arsenal was down to the shock of suddenly being without our 2 most creative players. Darren Waplington. Good morning, guys. Driving in Lincolnshire. It's wet and windy here, but the warmth of your podcast is keeping me going. Come on, you Reds. Darren, thank you for tuning in on your drive. We're chuffed to bits that we're with you in your car or your truck, whatever it is you're driving. Drive safely, won't you? Peter Cook says, fingers crossed we can get something from the City game. Just hope we don't get a backlash off of them after yesterday's loss against the Scousers. Yep, that's what we're saying. Good morning to Bruce. Howdy, y'all, over in Texas. Great to see you with us, Bruce. One thing you just said there, Dan, and I'm going to ask Richard about this. I'll maybe get your thoughts on it as well. But Richard, Dan just mentioned how much Man City are missing Rodri. And look, he's just won the Ballon d'Or. Whether you agree with that or not, he is a fantastic player. And he's shown time and time again just how important he is. And when he got sent off last season, when we played them, in times past, we've gone down, or rather, we've played against really good teams who have gone down to 10 men and still kind of struggled to affect the game. When they lost Rodri, I mean, we just dominated the second half, and we were unlucky not to score and come away with something. So he's massively important to them. But with a team like Man City and with the money they've got and the money they've spent and the players they've got in their squad, how much of a surprise is it that just losing one player like Rodri can have such a massive effect on them? Because I must admit, I didn't see this coming. I thought that they were a team that didn't rely on one player so much. And from what Dan's just said, actually, the reliance on Rodri is bigger than we thought, isn't it?
Well, if you look at their XG, if you subscribe to the XG, which I know Dan will probably touch on a little bit in his stats later on, but they're down a goal on average from their XG this season compared to last season. They're also up on the opposing XG by a goal this season to last season. So clearly there's the common denominator between the two. I mean, this is a comprehensive thing as well. I mean, if you look at across the landscape of all their players, the rest of the supporting cast behind Holland is not performing at the same level as they did last season. So, but in terms of what we understand, because we personally lived the same sort of situation, right? Arsenal lived the same situation prior to Odegaard's return. When we don't have the creating effect, and Rodri is just an all-around great midfielder, right? In defensively, in terms of how he manages keeping the ball moving, up the pitch, that can't be understated. And you're right. I think it is something that we grasp, because when we don't have Morgan Gibbs-White, when we don't have Elliot Anderson, when we don't have people in that middle of the pitch to be able to drive the ball forward, to be able to get, do creative actions to enable us to be more attacking, or at least be more effective in our offensive play, it's been less than stellar, let's put it that way. And I mean, look at Arsenal being a perfect example of that, because that was one of the lowest XGs we've had this season, and we never looked like we could even be a threat in any capacity. So now obviously Man City's not in that place, because just look at the rest of the team and the depth that they might have. It's just not having that one sort of talismanic figure. At one time I think it was more De Bruyne, and now it's more Rodri. It makes a huge difference in terms of their overall comprehensive play, and that's played out in the statistics and the results.
And they've also been without Kovacic as well, Dan. I think he might be the player that you would look to bring in. I don't want to spend too much time really kind of analysing the City team, because this is, as much as there are opponents, and this is a preview for that game, but it is out of the ordinary for them to be in the kind of run they're in. Are you surprised so much, Dan, yourself, about the impact that Rodri, or the lack of Rodri, has had on the Man City team? Is it as simple as that? I mean, the supporting cast don't seem to be playing as well as they should be either, right?
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of their injury issues and who's fully fit or not. Obviously, they're managing playing a lot of extra games to us because they're in Europe and cup competitions and whatnot. So, it seems like they're missing more players than just Rodri. Like Stones doesn't seem to be playing regularly. Guardiola doesn't seem to be playing regularly. So I think there's more to it than just the one player. But I do think, he's like the Spanish Ryan Yates, isn't he, for them? He's that player that seems to dictate the atmosphere of the team and keep people together. We've seen on some of the behind the scenes videos how intense he is in the dressing room and stuff. I think it was the game against us where they drew 1-1 after Chris Wood equalised in that first season back for us, and he was kicking off in the dressing room, really giving it to the other players. And I think maybe they're missing that, because they do seem to have collapsed quite quite drastically. Pep himself seems to be a bit all over the shop when you see him. His body language and things like that. There's more going on there than just missing one player. There's an atmosphere change. There's a struggle to accept the position they're in, and that obviously bodes well for us going there. If we can just be our cool clinical selves with a solid away performance, then let's frustrate him for a while and see what we can do.
It's interesting because it does just look as though it spooked Pep a bit. Like it's like experiencing what every one of us has experienced with defeats after defeats and poor performances and tearing your hair out and scratching your face off type feelings. But it just seems to have spooked him. And I'm looking at him and it's like he just doesn't know how to deal with it. And some of the comments after yesterday, I mean, Stefan Ortega's come out and said something about Liverpool not being the nicest place in the UK, apparently. So, he's obviously saying stuff afterwards that perhaps we'd be better not saying. And Pep's saying and complaining, I didn't expect that from Liverpool fans to say sacked in the morning. So, it's definitely, he's not dealing with it very well. And what I want is for us to go to the Etihad and show them no respect whatsoever. I want us to kick them while they're down. I want us to get in there. I don't want us to set up with a back three. Before all of this, I would have said, let's go with a back three. I don't want that. I think to change it to a back three would be counterproductive. We've got a style of play. We've got a system. And Gibbs White's back, Anderson's back, and we have players there that can affect this game, I think. So let's have a think about shape. Let's have a think about team selection and so on. I'll put the foot mob on the screen as usual, and that's immediately showing us how we lined up to start the game against Ipswich at the weekend. So, Richard, if it's unchanged, we're looking at a back four of Nico Williams at left back, Ola on at right back, Milenkovic and Murillo in the centre back pairing, Yates, Anderson in the midfield, Hudson-Odoi on the left, Silva on the right, Gibbs White in the centre, Wood up top. Could you see it going unchanged, do you think? Or what changes would you make? Let's think about what you would do rather than what Nuno would do. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to try to match either one of them when it comes to football intelligence. But I would say I was actually thinking back three, not because I think we want to play tentative or ultra defensive, but just simply because I think we have the ability to do what we haven't been doing, and I'm sure Dan will get on this, which is really allowing the fullbacks to dictate more on the counter. So putting in the back three, Murillo, Milenkovic, I would probably put Murado in the middle and the Milenkovic on the right. Just because of his natural right-footedness. But, although we're getting outside of the normal Murado stat of letting him come in late in the game to close it out. So we'll see how that plays out. But, I would do that. I would maybe have Morgan in the middle. So where Yates is, again, managing that middle to wide play. Maybe Yates on the right, Anderson on the left, because that seems to be where we're kind of but in the middle. And then Moreno on the left.
It's coming. Keep going.
Yep. And then I actually think Jota or Alanga could play, and let Hudson-Odoi come off the bench. Given what Dan was talking about in terms of their back line, it feels like a moment where Jota's chaos might be a good thing. It might get them out of rhythm. At the same time, having Alanga's pace on the pitch and being able to do what he does, and maybe giving him a little bit more freedom to roam to a degree as it relates to where, because Jota was kind of doing something similar against Ipswich. He was a bit kind of played on the right quite a bit, and sort of would drift into the middle a little bit, come back out to the right. So there was a little bit of flexibility and freedom for him to roam to a certain degree. But I'm going to go with this for right now. Because I think Alanga, again, having that off the bench would be a value as well, having that pace to when they're getting tired and when you can sort of seize the moment.
Okay, so Rich is going with the back three. Murillo, Murato, Milenkovic. Across the midfield, so Moreno left wing back, Aina right wing back, and then Yates, Gibbs, White and Anderson making up the three in the middle with a kind of a front two with Wood and Jota Silva. So you're thinking back three. I mean, on the face of it, I like the look of that. I mean, as much as I say I wouldn't go with a back three, it's not like, oh my God, it can't be a back three ever. I just how I see it at the moment. But if it is that, then it would be hopefully be something that has been thought about. How far in advance do they plan these things? I wonder. Nuno might have been filtering into people's heads. Look, in 3 weeks' time, we're going to the Etihad. We're going to go to 3 at the back. So maybe they've been starting to work on that prior to this week. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing in training.
Yeah. Well, plus you get a little. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, man.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, plus you get a little extra height in Murado, having that 6'4" frame to help manage some set pieces as well. Because they're going to, as Dan pointed out, they're going to retain a lot of possession. So, if we're going to go down the road of giving up some set piece opportunities, because they will stress us, they will get into that final third, and they will move the ball around very effectively as they do in tight spaces, and it puts us in a position where we probably end up fielding a lot of corners. So having that in there too is a value. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
No, go Dan. What do you think? Any changes you'd make? What kind of shape you're looking at for you, as far as you're concerned?
Well, just following on from Richard's point, in an attacking sense as well. Yesterday, Van Dijk seemed to cause them a lot of problems from corners with his height and strength. So having Milenkovic and Morato up there would be a bonus from an attacking sense, because set pieces probably become one of our biggest chances to get goals against them. So it helps in that way as well. I like the look of it. I think looking back on Nuno's record against Man City is pretty good. He's played them 8 times. He's won 3. He's drawn 1 and he's lost 4, which against Man City is probably a pretty good record, being sort of 50-50 for defeats. And one of those games was a 2-0 win when he was manager of Wolves at City, which Bruce has mentioned in the comments there. And it was a very similar setup with a back 3 with the mighty Willy Bolly there right at the heart of it. And interestingly, Traore playing as kind of the right wing back in that, who is probably, I don't know how good he is defensively, but he never strikes me as a good defender as such. And he scored both goals. So he was playing as a very attacking, forward-thinking right wing back to get in behind him, and obviously his pace being his main attribute. So, and I think interestingly, Jimenez got both assists for that. So it was very much a case of knock the ball up to Jimenez, and he's probably just laying in Traore, who was absolutely bombing on the counter-attack. So there's a way to get at them with the back 3, as long as the wing backs are prepared to go forward and have got the pace to cause them some problems. And then there's obviously just a lot of emphasis on the midfield 3 to fill in the gaps and do the defensive work. So I do like the look of that lineup that we had on.
So for those listening, I've just put up the Wolves team that played in that 2-0 win, which was the 3-5-2 formation that Richard described. And we know that Nuno favoured a back 3 at Wolves quite heavily. He hasn't really employed that formation as much or nearly as much at Forest last season, or towards the end of the season. He picked games to play it. And of course, home to Man City was one of those. And we played quite well and quite effectively in that game. So it's not out of the question that it does go to a back 3. So Dan, are you on the side of it that it should be a back 3, or did you have in your head before you saw Richard's formation something different?
I think if it was me playing Football Manager, I would go with the back 3. I would set up something like that. I do think though that Nuno might go back 4. I think he seems quite dedicated to playing the back 4 and keeping our own style for the most part, the 4-2-3-1. And maybe he's looking at this thinking, well, why change? Because we're in a good position. We're not hunting for every single point that counts. So let's work on our own style of play and how we want to play, and and try and give him a game. I suppose the worry with that is we look at what happened at Arsenal, and it didn't really help us out there. Maybe on that occasion we could have done with going for the back 3. So I'm kind of either way. I would go back 3, but I sort of expect Nuno to go back 4.
So I've just changed it on the foot mob on the screen to a back 4 with Moreno at left back, Aina at right back, centre back pairing as you'd expect, Milenkovic and Murillo, Anderson, Yates sitting in midfield, and then it's basically the same team as what started against Ipswich. I mean, if he does go with a back 4, then let's suspend your preference for a back 3, and as you say, Dan, you think that Nuno might go with a 4, as I think he might as well. Let's think about the personnel that might go into a back into a back four formation. Does Jota Silva keep his place on the right hand side for you, Richard, if he plays, or like that, or is Alanga come back in to really kind of attack down against possibly Gvardiol playing at left back?
Yeah, I was almost thinking that I might switch out Hudson-Odoi for Sosa and give him a run. I mean, I don't know if Man City is the right one to do it away, but make that kind of change. But just based off of how Callum played, I mean, again, he didn't play terrible yesterday. I think he got a bad rap for his performance, but Silva did some good things, but I wouldn't say it was otherworldly to such a level where you could say it was infinitely better than what Alanga would do. I mean, clearly Alanga has an elite trait that makes him have somewhat of an advantage, but I like the tenacity of the way Silva plays, especially when he can drop on the defensive side. I mean, that could be a really good option. That gives you an opportunity to have both on the pitch. In fact, I think if you forced me to make a decision right now when it was a back four, I think I'd go right exactly what you have right now with Alanga on the left, Silva on the right, Gibbs White in that 10 position, Anderson the 8, Yates in this sort of pseudo 6, and then got Moreno, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Aina on the back. But the key is, are we going to be able to take advantage of the counter using Moreno? But I think Moreno does a good job in this scenario, overlapping a little bit better than Nico does. I think Dan touched on that yesterday in terms of not having to have a left-footed left back, but it's the way that they operate instead of an inverted left back, which is what Nico kind of does, overlapping with. And he's really good at crossing the ball in the middle, Moreno.
I think that the personnel might include Nico Dominguez for this game, if I'm honest with you. I wouldn't be surprised
wide role
to see Anderson maybe step
in
out.
Place of...
Yeah, I mean, Anderson and Gibbs White should play together in most games because I think that they're both brilliant. But I think when you're away at City, sometimes you make those tactical switches and you think, okay, well, because of where we are, who we're playing against, and the type of game it's going to be, in that we're not going to have as much possession on the ball or much of the ball at our feet, then I think you play with Dominguez and Yates in the midfield. If it's going to be a 4-2, if you're going to put 3 in the midfield, you might even put Anderson in there, but you might even include James Ward-Prowse. So I think packing the midfield out might be the way to go. I mean, similar to Liverpool away, it could well be that Dominguez goes there and then Anderson does come in there, or maybe Ward-Prowse comes in there. So Ward-Prowse and Yates in the midfield. You could even have Anderson up there. So Dominguez, Gibbs White, and Anderson are effectively your 3 behind Wood with Ward-Prowse and Yates. I mean, it could end up being something like that because of the personnel that we've got available and the opposition that we've got in front of us. It's going to be an interesting one. I mean, it's such an obvious thing to say. We're going away to the Etihad, and the context of the game is that Forest have by far surpassed any of our predictions. We thought we'd have a better season, but we're sitting 6th still after the end of the game week, and we're a point below Man City. Let's get your score predictions for this one then. What do you think is going to happen? Over to you, Richard Spray.
Just out of blind hope, I'm gonna go. They average 2 goals a game, so I'm gonna give them 2 goals. I'm gonna go 2-2. I think we get a late goal to tie it up, and we get the 1 point. They're gonna look like they're gonna run away with it towards the end of the match, and then we're gonna come back and score towards the end of the match and tie it up and get that needed extra point that we don't anticipate to get.
Okay, Danscape, what do you reckon?
I think we'd probably go with the lineup closest to what you had on the screen there, with the sort of defensive wide midfielders. And I think it ends at 1-1. I think they do normally score 2 goals a game, but we're very good defensively. So I think we can probably restrict them at the minute to 1, and we can nick 1, somewhere, set piece or a counter or something. And 1-1 would be my prediction.
Yeah, I was going to say 1-1 as well. Again, largely through hope that we can get a point away at the Etihad. If we were to win it, I think it'll only be a 1-0 win. One of those games, again, where we just do everything like we did against Liverpool. We get everything right. Things go our way. We manage to get luck on our side with maybe them scoring a goal that's offside or them hitting the post, those kind of things, just little things going our way. Maybe someone off the bench again to change it, Callum off the bench, or it wouldn't surprise me to see Alanga come off the bench and score. You know, perhaps being under pressure a little bit in terms of flack from some fans, not everyone, but it would be great for Alanga to come off the bench and be the man of the moment to get his, you know, real start of the season underway, really, because I think he needs that. So put a gun to my head, I'll go 1-0 Forest then, although I think it's more likely to be a draw. And yeah, I was all kind of not coming up with a Man City to win 3-0 or 3-1. Might be a little bit of blind optimism, but I think a lot of it is also built into the fact that, you know, they haven't been playing well. They are where they are. I mean, yesterday against Liverpool, if for anyone that didn't see it, I mean, the first half, it could have been 5-0 to Liverpool. You know, Van Dijk scored an offside goal and they could have, I think he hit the post and all kinds of other things were happening. So, you know, they definitely look out of sorts. We're going to have to hope that they stay out of sorts as we travel to the Etihad on Wednesday. All right, time for a quick break. It's 11:31 on the approach towards lunchtime.
This York shop is a cheese lover's paradise. The Cheese Trader is home to an array of fine British cheeses, not only selling it but offering an epic cheesy street food menu too. Guests can choose from a main dish and then select all the different types of cheese they'd like on top, alongside an array of other toppings. We tried their loaded fries and posh cheese toasties, both of which were absolutely smothered in gorgeous melted cheddar. We even chose a whole camembert to top our fries, which was so tasty, like a cheesy salt and pepper dish. The posh cheese on toast was some of the best toast we've ever had, with so many amazing flavours to it that perfectly paired with the cheese, tucked away just off Grape Lane. This is the perfect spot for a great lunch.
Now, I know that Stu Freestone is super busy. It's the build up to Christmas and he's taking so many orders at the moment. If you want to get your cheese orders in for Christmas, I know the delivery that's coming in this week is going to have the correct dates on it for it to last till Christmas. So now's a good time to start thinking about ordering. 10% off with the code Talking Reds. Support a Forest fan if you can. Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader. Okay, so we're just gone halfway. We've been talking about the Man City game coming up on Wednesday. We've got more Man City Forest preview to do with this. I love that track. You know, when it first came out, I remember I don't know how old I was, but everyone was like, what is this? But everyone was like, yeah, it's Statman. The Statman, Dan, as ever, you prepared some facts and figures for us to go through. So I'll put this on the screen. You can tell us all about it.
Okay. I wasn't expecting to bring this one up, but this is interesting because I looked back at the last game week of fixtures. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday games. And this is, I think it's Progressive carries into the final third. And Hudson-Odoi is top of all the teams, all the players. He's up there at number 1 spot. And Morgan Gibbs-White's in number 3. Suggesting that, you know, they actually did all right at their jobs against Ipswich compared to sort of every other player that played a game that weekend. They weren't, you know, terrible. They were pushing forward with the ball and, driving us into the final third. So yeah, that was just one, again, to sort of calm down the criticism of Hudson-Odoi a bit.
Okay, I've got this one as well. I'm just putting the slides up that Richard has loaded that I think you've shared. So tell us about this one.
So this is more of a general thing about our style of play, and I suppose what Raf was touching on a bit yesterday as well, in terms of the output from the 3 players behind Chris Wood. And it probably doesn't apply to this game because I think obviously against Man City, it's mostly about how we deal with their attacking threat. But in terms of our fullbacks getting forward and having touches in the attacking third, we don't do that as a team. And I think that is a very conscious decision. I think that is part of Nuno's approach. I think he has our fullbacks hold back, keep the defensive unit, and that is why we're sort of the second or third best defensive team in the Premier League. But what it does do is it means our wingers and our attacking three have got to do more work on their own. They don't necessarily have that bombing forward, overlapping, supporting fullback to help them out. Whereas if you look at some of the players on there like Porro, Robertson, Digne at Villa, Doggy at Spurs as well, but then Robinson at Fulham, teams more in perhaps our ballpark of where we expect to be. Munoz at Palace, they're bombing forward and get involved a lot more than Aina and Moreno. So I think it just helps to explain why we play the way we do.
Okay. Is that the same one? I can't quite see it.
That's similar, very similar, but that's attacking touches in the penalty, so the opposition penalty area. And on that one, we're even further down. So we're sort of 70th and 73rd with Moreno and Aina. Whereas, again, the likes of Brentford have got players up there in like 4th spot. Wolves have got El Nouri up there in 9th. Brentford's got another player up there in 10th. So again, it's how often do the defenders, particularly the fullbacks, actually get forward and touch the ball in the opposition box. And I think you can see there that the teams that do it tend to they score more, but they also tend to concede more. And again, it's that balance that we've got.
Okay. So the basics, Forest versus Man City. Take us through this slide, please, Daniel San.
Yeah. So I've been trying to find out what's actually gone wrong for Man City in terms of stats. And to be honest, there's a lot of things that, they're still top of. If we're going to look at like the attacking stats, they're still pretty much top of the league for all those things. They're just not converting it into results at the minute. But if we look at this one in particular, obviously looking at goals for, Man City currently in like the 65th percentile in the Premier League. So they are not at the top of the league in terms of obviously scoring goals at the minute, which when you compare to their normal standards is a drop off down to just being just inside the top half. We're creeping down in terms of goals scored. We're down in the sort of the bottom 35th percentile, but we're scoring the goals at the right time, which is what's mattering. In terms of goals against is where it flips. And, even though Man City are known for their attacking skill, they're still normally a very good defensive unit. But at the minute, we are basically in the top 2 or 3 in the league for goals against and clean sheet percentage. And they're right in mid-table for that. So it is the defensive side of their game that's the problem for them. As I think other people will spot, and the style of their play, if they're not on it and they have the ball and they try and dominate the game, then they can be easier to get at when they're not completely 100%.
Okay.
So then just the last 2 bits is sort of goals for us away from home and for them at home. So you can see that, we don't score a lot away from home, and they do still score a lot of goals at home. So I think it would be hard for us to expect a clean sheet. But goals against, again, they've dropped down into like goals against at home for Man City. They're in the bottom 25% of the league now. So their home defensive record is particularly poor, and our away defensive record is in the top 25%.
Okay. One thing that has kind of been a buzz around the fan base as we've been doing so well this season, and a good friend of ours over at Forest Focus, Greg Mitchell, has been crying out for some European football. When you came up with the Greg Mitchell European Dream Tracker, which you featured firstly when you were in a member stream on Forest Focus recently. So I put it on the board for you to update us on the European Dream Tracker.
Yep. So the red line is the kind of benchmark over the last 10 years for the number of points or points per game that you need to qualify for Europe. So it's an average, it's not exact, but it gives us an idea where we are without having to worry too much about each individual game and league position, because, things change over time. So we are, after Ipswich, we're now on 22 points. We needed to be on 21 points to be in that European mix. So we're back above the line. We've not dropped below the line since we played Palace, basically. So we've stayed on track since the Palace game, despite our couple of defeats. Against Man City, we don't actually need a point from Man City to stay on track. But if you look at the next 3 games, which are all quite difficult, City, Man United and Villa, at some point we need to pick up 4 points from those 3 games to kind of stay on track short term. So, let's try and get it at Man City, basically, and stay above the Dream Tracker.
My good friend Sergio, who I've mentioned a few times, who's an Arsenal fan, who started to watch Talking Reds podcast and pay more attention to how Forest have been doing. He and I had a conversation, and he said the last thing you need is to get into Europe next season. He said if you get into Europe next season, that's going to be too much too soon, too early. Your squad's not ready for it yet. And I wondered what you guys thought about that. Are we asking for too much too soon? I mean, admittedly, we're looking at Conference League or Europa League, but that's Thursday, Sunday football. That can be quite disruptive. I mean, look at Aston Villa. They had a great season last year, got into Champions League, which is, of course, what any of us would want. But they're down in 11th at the moment, I think, or something it is. I know that the points difference between them and us is still quite small, but they lost again yesterday, 3-0 against Chelsea. You know, it can take its toll on a squad, right, Richard, that you've got more football, which we all want as fans. We want to be going to Bratislava. We want to be going to Sofia in Bulgaria. We want to be going to these places. But in the bigger picture sense, is that a good thing for us at this stage? Or should we really just kind of hold our horses? A nice little top 10 finish, 10th, 11th would be just right this in terms of progression. Let's build again. Let's kind of thicken that squad up in terms of the experience that we need in it, in terms of the quality we need in it, and then think about European football for another year or two in the future. What do you think?
I mean, we still got 2 windows to potentially add to our depth as well, and we're obviously going to potentially lose Murillo next summer. So, to his point, the question becomes, how do you replace a player like that, considering his progress as a player this season compared to last? And yeah, it's hard because I tend to align with the big man and say, you know, if we're going to get ourselves into Europe faster than we anticipated, for one thing, there's a financial benefit for that, because we obviously, the higher we finish up the table, the more revenue we can accumulate. But I don't know. Yeah, my heart says I'll be more than pleased to be in Europe at this point compared to where I thought we were going to be, which is more in the mid to closer to the relegation zone, not right above it, but in that general direction. And to kind of supersede that at the rate we did is a great value to me. And I don't know. I'm probably being to say what Pete Blackburn says. I just tend to go, I don't know. Yeah, I can't say I'd be disappointed if we superseded our expectations, but I agree with you. I think by getting into that somewhere, 8th, 9th, 10th range, maybe 9th or 10th to down to 12th, accumulating a little bit more depth through the next 2 windows, trying to put ourselves in a position to be more prepared for that the following year would be a value. That's probably where my mind is at. It's more of a head over heart moment.
I mentioned Serge's comments because he's not a Forest fan. He's someone looking in who's got no emotional interest in the club, like we have. And actually, an outsider's kind of perspective that's objective is quite interesting, Dan. I mean, look, we all want European football. We all want to get back to those days. The last time we played in Europe, we got beaten by Bayern Munich in the quarters. We had a nice little run, and that team, Leon at home as well, famously Paul McGregor and all that. These are things that are etched in our history, and obviously we've got the European days, the World Cup winning days, to think back on as well. What do you think, Dan? Would it be too much too soon?
I think it's just PSR, isn't it? If it wasn't for PSR, I expect that our owners would back us to improve the squad as much as we would need to. And, it would be part of their plan, their vision, their dream to really see us establish ourselves as a European squad. But we just don't have the revenue to be able to invest to that level and stay within PSR. So I think, unfortunately, it would be a massive drag on what we do in the league if we suddenly add in another, whatever it is, 10 games or something to our into our schedule. I also think that some of the European competitions now are a bit like, I don't know, they don't have the same weight as like the UEFA Cup when we were in that and stuff. So it's not quite as much of a draw at the lower end of the European competitions as it was when it was just like Champions League, UEFA Cup, and they were both, you were going to be mixing it with some really nice names of teams in there all the time. So yeah, it's basically, I don't think it's actually up to us. It's that PSR limitation that makes it so difficult for a team like us, unless we can suddenly double our revenue. But then I guess how do you increase your revenue without getting your name wider, becoming a club that you're bringing in more shirt sales and more interest in TV revenue? So it's a balance, but we'd still love to do it, because I think we're just on a ride, aren't we, as a club? Even if we had a bad couple of seasons, as long as we stay in the Premier League, I think we'll still
I
enjoy
mean,
it.
that's the catch-22. I mean, it's not so much that we don't want to go to Europe, we do, but it is the restraints that are put on clubs that you go into these competitions and you want to bring in quality, but you are bound by these PSR rules, which are a bit of a mockery, really. And I was listening to Gabby Agbonlahor on Talk Sport this morning, and he was also bemoaning the rules because you look at Aston Villa, who got top four, they want to improve their squad, but they were having to sell before they could really bring people in just to get the right balance there. And to me, it just feels wrong. It feels like the balance is too much in favour of those teams that are already at the top with the big stadiums that are just going to go on and go on and go on. And for us to get back into Europe would be absolutely magical. And I think of the fans that are much younger than I, that have got no memory of anything other than League One or Championship and now experiencing Premier League for the first time, to give those fans some European football would be absolutely fantastic. But I wouldn't want us to go into Europe if it meant that we struggled in the league and we lost our Premier League place. Because for me, being in the Premier League is where it's at. Week in, week out, Premier League football, it's just on another level now to what it ever used to be. And, I've got family that are Sheffield United fans. And so they've yo-yoed a bit in the last 10 years or so. And one of them was like, well, I'd rather play Championship football every week and win than get beat in the Premier League every week. And I was like, okay, fine. But you know what? There's nothing quite like being in the Premier League. There's nothing quite like battling in the Premier League. We've been quite fortunate because when we come up and we made all those signings that we made and got all that flack that we got, we rolled the dice. We rolled the dice and said, look, we're going to give it a go. And it worked out for us. And we have to thank Steve Cooper for that. Let's not forget Steve Cooper got us up and kept us up in season one. Under all that pressure, all that noise that was coming into the club, with all the players that you had to build a team from, to try and give minutes to everybody, to try and find out who was going to work well together. I mean, that achievement should never be underestimated. So for us to be in the Premier League and now in the third season, sitting in sixth, it feels like, we're now starting to really find our feet. So I would be happy to forego European football for a season or two if it meant in the long term our Premier League place was much more assured. If we go into Europe and we play away on a Thursday, a team that we've never heard of, and then on the Sunday we get a 3-0 battering at home to Ipswich, then I might be feeling a little bit less, pleased with the situation we're in. I remember that we played Brighton, I think it was last season or in season one where we won 3-0. It was the end of the first season, wasn't it? And they'd just come off the back of playing in the Cup a few days before. They were battle weary. These games take their toll. And teams that are down at the bottom that are fighting for points will always try and capitalise. So look, yeah, of course, European football is going to be amazing, but let's just be careful what we wish for. We haven't beaten the Premier League conundrum just yet. We're sitting in sixth. We're loving every second of it. But, let's just go to Wednesday night. Go on, Dan.
I was just going to say, I'd take the FA Cup win over European qualification. Or even a final, even an FA Cup final. Definitely. I would probably take that over finishing in a European place this season. That would be an even bigger, dream.
Absolutely.
At the minute.
Absolutely. Mark Warwell is with us. Thank you so much for the £2. Super. Thanks. Big games coming. Let's see where we are in the new year. Absolutely, Mark. We hope you're well. A good friend of ours who has been watching recently, and we appreciate your donation. Anyone else that would like to give us some super thanks as well, then by all means, you can join in the fun as well. Right. We are moving towards 50 minutes. We are on day 2 of December, which means it's day 2 of the Talking Reds Nottingham Forest Advent Calendar. Yesterday, we revealed door number 1, and it was Peter Shilton. Let's see who's behind door number 2. Ola Aina is the man behind door number 2. He's a player that started his career as a youth at Chelsea and came through their academy to gain 3 first-team appearances. Loans at Hull and Torino saw the fullback make a permanent move eventually to Torino in Italy, where he made another 72 appearances for them, as well then as having a loan spell back in England at Fulham. It didn't quite work out for him there because he was out of contract in July 2023, and Aina was one of the fresh batch of signings as Forest started season 2 back in the Premier League. He came in on a free transfer and had a solid and effective impact on the first team last season. Injuries and AFCON did disrupt things a little bit, but it's safe to say that Ola Aina this season is most definitely in the conversation for player of the season so far. He's 2-footed and able to operate at left back and right back. He's put in some eye-catching performances, been a standout player and generated so much love from the fan base with his bubbly, friendly and mischievous personality off the field. And that stunning strike against West Ham to cap a 3-0 victory made us love him even more. There's a new contract on the table, and all Forest fans are waiting with bated breath for that to be signed, sealed, and delivered. Ola Aina, our door number 2. Richard, what more can be said about Ola Aina that hasn't been said already?
Yeah, I don't know. I think you covered it nicely. Easily, and not only in terms of his impact on our squad, which has been massive, both in terms of how he manages himself in the dressing room, that contributes to the culture in such a fun and uplifting way, but also gosh, the guy is about as I keep using this word. I can't think of another adjective, but he's so smooth. Just everything he does is so measured and beautiful to watch. So I also, love the fact that he's starting to move up the list of players in the league in terms of effectiveness as a fullback. In my mind, maybe I can be disproven here. He's one of the top 5, I think, fullbacks in the league. Certainly. Yeah. So what else can you ask for a guy, as you mentioned, that's on a free, and we're going to be signing here to hopefully a 3 to 4 year deal to keep him here and continuing to build. And he's still a relatively young guy too. I think isn't he like 26?
27, I think.
Yeah. So he's still relatively young. Yeah. A lot to come.
I think he's Raf's favourite player this season so far. Dan, how impressed have you been with Ola Aina?
Definitely more impressed with his defensive work than I expected to be. I think he's probably our most impactful defender in terms of like the number of tackles and the number of interceptions he's making. So he's doing it. He's doing a brilliant job. I sort of didn't know what to expect from him this season because there was a couple of times last season where he dipped off and he looked like he was losing concentration. And I think, again, coming back to what we touched on earlier with the style of our fullbacks, he's been asked to just concentrate mainly on the defensive work, and he's doing a brilliant job of that. I'd like to see more from him in the final third. That would be that's the only thing I've ever sort of criticised from him. I think sometimes that final delivery isn't at like the level of Aurier. Aurier in his prime would be able to whip balls in and find that striker's head. But this season, he's still put some great crosses and things in. So I think, just on the attacking side, it would be nice because he's so, like you say, naturally 2-footed and so smooth on the ball that you sort of think he would be one of those top attacking fullbacks. But at the minute, that's the only area I'd like to see a bit more from. But yeah, he's one of the first names on the team sheet, left back or right back.
I've been impressed with how his personality has affected Alanga and Hudson-Odoi and the others as well. I mean, he's always at the thick of it off field and, getting really involved in the club. And it looks like he's so happy to be here. So getting him signed up for me is an absolute must. He's been one of our best players, I think. And I think he's got to be in the conversation for top 3 fullbacks in the Premier League at the moment with his output and with his performances. So he's door number 2. When we don't do a pod, such as tomorrow, for example, I'll release door number 3 onto X and TikTok and all the social media channels. So we'll do our advent calendar. We've got one for every day. And when there's no podcast, we'll release it through social media. So you can have a look and see who's behind the other doors as well. We've got a little bit more time as well. I mentioned the Garibaldi Bard, a very good friend of the show. He's come up with a medley, a Christmas medley. Now, I'm not going to play all of it because it will take several minutes. What we are going to do is try and chop it up into segments. And our IT guy, Richard Spray, is going to get to work and get shopping. But for those of you listening and for those of you watching, here's a flavour of the Garibaldi Bard's Forest Christmas album. No use of AI. at all. So for anyone thinking he's just got AI involved, no. This guy is a professional. He's written it all. He sings it all. He puts the effort in. So this is the kind of content as Forest fans I love. And so credit to the Garibaldi Bard for coming up with this gem.
It's Rocking Around the Turkey Tree, the new album from the Garibaldi Bard. This Christmas, 150 songs on 150 CDs. Why don't you put it under the tree for someone you love this Christmas?
Last Christmas I gave Nuno my heart, and on Boxing Day we beat Newcastle away. Next year we'll be on the biz, playing Barcelona. You see him bobbing and weaving and scoring a screamer or two, but there's nothing you can do when our liner is running at you. Tower will want you this Christmas. Tower will score a goal. Tower will want you this Christmas. Tower will score a goal. It will be cold, so cold, if you just score a goal this Christmas.
I could play that, all of that. It's so good. I can't tell you how impressed I am. It's so good. Go and check out the Garibaldi Bard on TikTok. Go and check him out on X. He's posted the video himself, so you can go and see it, for yourselves if you haven't seen it already. Give him a follow, give him a like, let him know how good it is, because it doesn't have to be doing this kind of stuff. And it's, as fans, we want to see what other people come up with. And it's just good fun. And we all love the club. And it is really, really good to see the Garibaldi Bard at his best. So thank you very much to him. Okay, we're out of time. So final thoughts over to you, Danscape. Anything you want to close with?
No, not much today. I think not been long enough between podcasts to have any thoughts. Just been to sleep and come back. So no, nothing really. I think let's not overanalyze if we do lose to City. They're still a very good team. They're still, like I say, top of most of what teams do in this Premier League. They're just not as effective at the minute. But that doesn't mean that, on the day there might just be moments where it suits them. So let's not beat ourselves up. Let's go in as a team. We've got to put so much energy and effort in to just keep them at bay and take our chances and see what we get.
Absolutely. Don't want to play that one.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
We could play more Karate Kid.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
There we go. Richard Spray, final thoughts from you, sir.
Yeah, amen to what Dan said. I would also want to just call out, and forgive me, Dan, for doing this live, but all of the guys who contribute to us and ladies that contribute are amazing. They're just brilliant at what they do in terms of what they provide us as a podcast. But I have to say, Dan is phenomenal at what he does. I mean, you look at all the effort and energy that Garibaldi Bard puts into what he does to contribute in such a positive way in social media and other spaces. But Dan, without those stats, without his efforts and energy and time that he puts in, because it's not an easy process, I'm sure, to be querying through FBref and all the other things that he's doing to try to generate that, as well as collectively bringing it all together. So I want to give a big shout out to Dan. He's such an amazing guy and a great contributor to this podcast, massively important contributor. So thank you.
No, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just, I'll back everything up. You just said that the painfully shy Danscape is probably sat there thinking, oh my God.
I'm no good
Exactly.
at taking compliments.
No, he's not going to take it. No, but it's true. And Dan's going to be with us on every review going forwards, because the stats are an integral part of what we do. I want to put a shout out to Gary Lamb, a big supporter of the podcast. He got in touch to say that it's Crohn's and Colitis Awareness Week, December the 1st to the 7th. And I know that Gary is a sufferer. Crohn's disease is a long-term condition where the gut can become inflamed. It's very uncomfortable. And you may not have heard of ulcerative colitis before, or just colitis as it's usually referred to. That's a type of inflammatory bowel disease. So for people that suffer with those conditions, they can tell you quite clearly that it's not fun at all. And, I've got friends that have suffered with that. And I know from firsthand experience that it can be quite debilitating. So we send our love and best wishes to Gary Lamb, to all of our watchers and viewers that may be suffering with Crohn's and colitis, and to let you know that we're with you, okay? And we're trying to raise awareness. Anything we can do to support you, you know that we will. Okay, enough of that, because you know me, I'll only start crying. Time to go. We'll be back to
Quiz question answer.
Saying, the quiz answer. You know, I always forget the quiz answer. Richard's jumping. The quiz question. Okay, who did Forest sign out for Inca Haaland from? Was it Byrne or Rossland? Do we know? Don't know. Do you?
Not sure. No.
Rossland, maybe.
I'm guessing.
It wasn't Rossland. It was Byrne.
Okay.
There you go. So there you go. Anyone who's interested, it was Byrne that we signed Erling's dad from.
In Norway, Byrne, is it? Is that Norway?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. He ended up going to Rossland later. So I imagine so. I'm still thinking that Haaland's going to end up playing for us one day. Well, once we get into Champions League and Man City have been relegated, he's going to want to come back and play for his dad's first English team. So, yeah, Erling Haaland will be back in the Garibaldi at some point soon. In the meantime, join us for the Man City review and the Man United preview on Thursday. I think we're going to do that all in one go because the games are so close to each other. So we'll preview and review the Manchester teams. You know what I'm saying. We'll see you soon. This is Talking Reds. Bye-bye.